Test. Hey everyone, welcome to Product Austin. We're going to get started the presentation in about 10 minutes. But again, the first 15-20 minutes of tonight's gathering is a chance for everybody to network, which we know is hard with the tables and moving around and stuff. But the next 10 minutes, if you can make sure to introduce yourself to everyone at the table, say hi, say where you're from, why you're here, etc. It'd be a great chance to network and make sure that as you leave tonight, you've met a bunch of people, and as you keep coming, you meet more and more people in kind of the product community here in Austin. So you have 10 minutes. Start introducing yourselves now.
How do you like your apple out?
And then I negotiated with all the speakers, and they're like, hey, I can do March. Richard? Welcome. We're coming. Richard. Richard works at GM. There's a small crowd here at GM, General Motors. They're building a full feature car IT and moving from a service to a product. Very cool. Innovation. Raj, money there, so like, you see everything right there? With a check register. Yeah, he's from GM. Yeah, Dr. Hickson. Thank you. So yeah, mix of large companies. They have a full service. They're doing HP, GM was doing all internal IT outside. Brought all IT back. It is like a complete business transformation. We probably 3 years ago. And for these other features,
Focusing on innovation. A lot of companies
they want to like, what am I going to say? If you ask me, I would be saying Google SaaS, Google Cloud. That's what I would say. And like, I don't think you're this. The other guy
So if I say high output,
like that lean. Like, there's nothing lean in the seriously, there's nothing lean. That book is like it's basically going through stuff that's really like fun too. And you're just putting the word lean in there. You work for marketing. You got a speaking slot at conference. Yeah. Again, the question is, do you want to stay true to the values? Do you want to get stay true? I'm not sure. I'm not going to lie. Be disingenuous. I know, I was crazy. I was very thinking, but this one, if I put lead, I'll get it.
yeah, exactly. And he said, you're all the way out of the
I'm just talking to Riley. What's from your products? Yeah. I've already have them before, maybe 80% of the book. And she's like, product title, we asked him that, absolutely right. Let's talk to do it. Whatever contact Riley. You put the product manager. What is, I get your own answer. You're only selling the product. You can get your audience total. What's the guy?
Yeah, there's a couple that I disagree with. I almost commented on one side. Oh, sure. Yeah, the way that shows a lot of the content. Yeah, I guess it's I don't do a lot of that. We just talk about it. I think it's basically a blog.
Slowly getting there to like not quick change. It's okay. I'll try with my own business or what I started thinking of my own. None of it Agile
Lots of noise, so we're good. All right. Should we start?
You should sit down.
There's plenty of extra chairs up front if you guys want to sit. All right, I think we're going to get started, everyone. All right. Thank you all for networking. We really appreciate that. All right. Now we need to stop networking. Is this my shot? All right, guys, let's get started. I don't know. I must not be very loud. So, hey, everyone, we're going to get started here. All right, welcome again to Product Austin. Again, thank you so much for spending a little time getting to know everyone. I'm Josh Duncan, if you haven't met me. This is Roger and Prabhakar. We're your hosts for tonight. So just a couple logistical things before we get started. If you did park in the building, make sure to stop up front because you can get your parking validated. I think it's $5 versus $30 if you grab that beforehand. How many of you are coming to your first Product Austin event? All right, that's a great number. And how many of you are currently in a product management role or supporting product management in some way? All right, well, we definitely have a product-oriented crowd tonight. That is awesome. So, very excited about tonight's talk. It is High Output Product Management with Todd Olson. If you don't know who Todd Olson is, he's currently the CEO and founder of Pendo. He has a really interesting background. If any of you were developers at some point, you might have heard of TogetherSoft or Borland or Rally Software. Todd has played executive and founder roles in several of these companies, so he has a very deep background in product development and application lifecycle management. I think we're going to have we're in for a really good talk tonight. So what we're going to do here is we're going to let Todd talk for a little bit, and then we're going to have a little Q&A section at the end. So please stick around, ask some questions, and then we'll leave a little time at the end of the meeting for a little more networking if you want to meet some more people here. So again, thank you so much for coming, and please join me in welcoming Todd to Product Austin.
Thank you. Is this on? You guys hear me? Make sure I raise my voice. You guys hear me in the back? Great. Well, thanks for having me. So it's great to be here. Just a little bit about me. I've already got, you did a great job introducing my background. As was said, I'm the CEO, co-founder of Pendo. I will do a brief intro of Pendo after this. Before that, head of products at Rally Software. So up and through the IPO, Rally did large-scale Agile product development. So a lot of strong background in Agile. And before that, startups, larger companies, plenty of acquisitions, mostly in software. So a lot of this talk will be, maybe the stories will be more software-oriented stories. But everything from startups, where I was maybe a one-person product team, to large companies at Rally. I had both product marketing and product management and UX and like a much larger product team where I didn't actually make direct decisions about the product in terms of day-to-day. So hopefully I'll have a lot of that encompassed, wide background that we can talk a little bit about this topic. Also, Pendo is this company I am now CEO of and founded sells to product people almost, I wouldn't say exclusively per se. We have customer success folks that are using it now as well. But we started as a product-oriented company. So most of our customers, 2/3 of our users are product managers or product people. So I have the opportunity to just talk with and see a lot of great product organizations, how they work across a variety of industries. Again, mostly in software, a lot in software as a service specifically. But what we do is we provide analytics to help people understand how people use their product. We provide feedback, the ability to actually survey people in app and get qualitative information about the product. And then we also help people deliver in-app guidance, so help people walk through different aspects of the products, onboard them, educate them, all around increasing product success. So we started this company about a little over 2 years ago, and we actually started in a place just like this. So it's called HQ Raleigh. You can Google it. We had a room that was no bigger than these tables, I think. And for a year, we crammed our whole company, which was 6 of us, into this little room, and we iterated on product market fit. And I had just exited Rally, where we had obviously large building, lots of people, and it was really exciting to get back to my roots and just invent again. I actually programmed for the first 6 months, so I do have a computer science degree. I am technical, but also helped on the product direction and iterated to find product market fit. I mean, a lot of people talk about product market fit and elusive, and I've had the opportunity to both find product market fit in tiny companies as well as big companies, and I think that's the exciting part. Through that journey, we ended up getting some good customer traction, a lot of growth. We closed on our Series A last October, good timing, $11 million from Battery Ventures. So that's just a little bit about Pendo. If you are a company, who are companies here in Capital Factory? We have folks. A lot of empathy for RA. One of the craziest things was realizing that we had 6 people start, like a Monday later, and we had no place to put them. So I think what you've been through, and after space now and scrambling around and grabbing things than I would like to be doing, but it's an exciting journey. So this talk, the inspiration for this talk came over a blog post I read late last year, right around the end of year blog post. Everyone has their end of year blog post, and I think the title is something around product managers don't do anything. They don't do anything. It's like, well, here, this is like basically what I've been doing for the past few years, and this blog post by a pretty credible person said they don't do anything, and we don't build any software, we don't actually write it, we don't deliver it, we don't actually close any deals, we don't do anything. And I was definitely taken aback. I immediately started writing a blog post on it, thinking about it. It kind of bothered the hell out of me. Because also part of the assertion was, well, because we don't do anything, you really can't measure what we do. So how do we know? I mean, are all product managers equal? Are we all equally as good? Are there good ones? Are there bad ones? How do we measure? How do we know one product person is better than another product person at their job? How do we measure these things? If we don't do anything, and we don't have clear deliverables and goals, then how do we actually measure our effectiveness, right? So this struck me as problematic. Also because I have a company where we're trying to measure, of course, our product usage and things like that. So I'm really passionate about measurement, analytics. Every aspect of the companies that I like to be part of and run have metrics. We measure things. I like analytics. Opinions are interesting, but data's far more relevant for me to make decisions. So if we can't measure it, that's a problem. And then the article went on to say, well, basically your job is to set a vision and good luck. Cross your fingers, hope everything works out the best, you're doing your best. And that, and while I think product managers do have to set vision, and part of the product leadership is to do that, and roadmap is part of that. Not a big fan in my style of just hoping for success on luck. So I kind of step back and say, well, how do we codify what product managers do? And if you Google this subject, you'll get a lot of good topics. This is from Entheosis. They're a Silicon Valley product management consulting, at least it used to be. A guy named Luke Homan ran it. He now does innovation games, if you follow that crowd at all in the Agile community. I know Luke pretty well through a variety of things, both at Rally and other. And they produced this nice diagram, and it looks awesome. It's typical diagram for these things. Product's always at the center because it's, in our mind, the most important thing in the world, right? Everything revolves around product. And then we have everything in the sides. We have executives at the top. We have this marketing. And then it does a lot of things. It's strategy, roadmap, budgeting, lots of things. If you're like a young person coming out of college and you saw this, wouldn't this be scary? Like, what of all these things do I actually do? And this is part of the challenge of these diagrams. There's almost too much content on this. Here's one I grabbed. It's called Dan Schmidt. It's another it's the most popular actually answer on Core for what product managers do. It's an eye chart, so I could try to read some of these things. Budget, investor relations. If you're a startup, you're probably not doing investor relations, right? A lot of you may, but honestly, it may not be your exact job. Maybe the founder's doing it. It's sort of important, but if you're a product manager on a team of 100, I guarantee you're not going to do investor relations unless you're the very top person. Again, this largely depends. What you do in these things largely depend on the organization. There's things like strategic partnerships, monetization. SEO is listed as activities on these things. And sometimes you do that, sometimes you do not. But it's not a clear cut on, if I told you, okay, I'm going to answer this question, what do you do? Just giving you this diagram would probably make you more confused. So then, the diagram that a lot of us come back to is the pragmatic diagram. And I think someone from Pragmatic I heard was in the room tonight. I have used this throughout my career a lot. I think it's as good as any of the diagrams that are out there. And this is exactly how I typically run them. I've run various sizes, but at some organizations I'll draw circles around them. I'd say your job is this circle, and your job is this circle. And that's one way to kind of partition the roles and responsibilities. At the end of the day, most of these things probably have to get done. Someone has to do them. So, drawing circles is a good way to balance activities. So definitely things to do. But again, it's not clear guidance on how to actually drive product management. So I'm going to introduce a new framework, and it's inspired by this book. And this book is called High Output Management. It's actually an oldie but a goodie, so to speak. So if you follow Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz, he'll say this is the best management book ever written. Other CEOs of plenty of companies have said this is the only management book you ever need to read. And I got to confess, if I had to pick one, this would probably be at the top of my list. It covers everything from how to run a meeting, one-on-one, to how to do planning. But he comes up with good frameworks to think about management's role in an organization. And a product manager is a manager. And you can decide, well, what about a product owner? I'm loosely talking about all these roles because product owners are just, honestly, an agile-fied name of a product manager. It's essentially the same function. So what Andy Grove is the former CEO of Intel, if you don't know, but a lot of people came out of his school of thinking. But and this book is pre-email, so I will warn you before you read it. It is pre-email, so I'll caveat it a bit. But what he says is the manager's output is equivalent to the output of this organization plus the output of neighboring organizations under his influence. So this is it's a pretty meaty term. So let's decouple that. So I started stepping back and in any role in an organization, there's two types of roles. There's what they call span of control and span of influence. And traditionally, product managers are span of influence roles. A lot of influence, right? So, and if you look at it, it influences a lot of the company. So if I first sat back and say, what are the neighboring organizations of products? So clearly, engineering is a strong neighboring organization. So a lot of companies will put engineering and product together. Very often, product managers sit in the same team with engineering. clearly a strong link. If it had a closest neighbor product, it'd probably be engineering, right? Because they build the product. So that seems like a pretty natural. But there's a lot of other neighboring organizations. Customer success and support, clearly a neighboring organization. Sales, clearly a neighboring organization. Marketing, etc. So what this formula says is that your output should be judged by the output of sales. So while you aren't selling, you should be measuring yourself on your company's sales. You should be measuring yourselves on the output of these various organizations. And how do you do this? So this book also introduces this concept of a know-how manager. So a know-how manager is not a manager of people, it's a manager of knowledge. So a know-how manager is defined as someone who has certain domain expertise, right? And it says that the product, our know-how managers, their potential for influencing neighboring organizations is enormous. So the fact is, your know-how as a product person is a lot of things. It's the market, it's the personas, it's the pain, it's the problems, it's the competition. You have a lot of know-how, and your job is to bring that know-how into the neighboring organizations to drive more output, to create an enormous effect on how these organizations work. And if you look, there's a lot of things here to influence. So if you're looking at engineering, it could be obviously a quality product. The output of engineering is quality software products. That's what engineering produces. So absolutely, product has know-how, knowledge, and how to provide a better quality product. Marketing collateral is an output of the marketing team. Leads is a marketing output. And I'll talk a little bit more later on how the know-how of product can go to measure leads. Sales, obviously, revenue. Customer success is renewals and upsells. And then support is resolved tickets, happy customers, things like that. So the point of this is, when product managers are measuring your output, measuring your results, you should be looking at, how did I affect these things? How did I move these things? This year, we started at X. Where are we at the end on these various vectors? And I know this seems like, wow, that's a lot of measures. That's really, really hard. But you have the influence. You have the opportunity, if you're doing your job correctly, to be influencing all these parts of the organization. Maybe not all at one time, but certainly it's possible. So then another framework that he's introduced is, so what does it mean to drive output? Well, here's another formula. It's a manager's output is equal to the sum of an activity times the leverage of the activity. I think this is a really, really key formula to understand, because it's not just doing things, writing stories, building a roadmap. These are the activities that product managers do. It's the leverage of the activity within your organization that's really going to be the driver of output. Now, I'll talk a lot more about leverage, but leverage is a really powerful thing. And there's really three basic kinds of activities that all managers do, and then certainly product managers do. So he has them cited as collecting information, sharing information, and making decisions. So how much does it sound like a normal product manager's job in your organization? Collecting information, sharing information, making decisions. You guys do these things? Yeah. Think about it. I mean, that's basically all we really do. We're gathering information for the market. We're constantly reading things. We're talking with customers. We're looking through support tickets. We're talking with sales. We're looking at other competitors' products. We're collecting insane amounts of information. That is our jobs. I mean, if you're not reading at least an hour a day, you're probably not doing your job. So suck in tons of information. And then your job is then to take that, synthesize it, and impart that to the rest of the organization to drive output. And again, I'll go through a ton more specific concrete examples, but this is a big part of your job. So, and this is what you do. You take in information, you share it. And then lastly, you make decisions. I mean, at the end of the day, someone has to decide certain things, like what thing comes before another thing, what goes on a roadmap, what doesn't. These are the decisions you primarily make. But honestly, that's a small part of your job in contrast to collecting information and sharing information. So the other thing you want to focus is on high leverage activities. And the way you think of high leverage activities is, how much the organization you're going to affect, and it's pretty simple. You can either, if you do an activity that affects a lot of people, that's high leverage. Or it affects people over a long period of time. So if you do something that lasts a really long time, then obviously it's a very high leverage activity. And another good example is, let's take an example from a typical product owner, product manager, authoring a user story. How much leverage does this have in an organization? Well, it depends, right? It depends on the story, the size. Maybe it's a story that only one developer has to work on. Maybe it's super, super small. Could be a very low leverage story. What if it's something that the engineering team just has to build, cleaning up a database or reorganizing something, or I talk to a lot of companies, and there's always this argument. Like some companies, engineers actually write the stories. Now, a lot of times I'll talk to customers. People say, well, we're more engineering driven. Our product managers don't really write the stories. Our engineers write the stories. Product managers talk most to the customers. They share ideas. But then they say, we hate that. Our engineers kind of control what's being built, right? There's this like machismo almost with product people who are like, no, we write the stories. We control what's being built. But I'd argue if you're in an organization where it's a low leverage task of authoring a single user story, who cares who writes it? Does it really matter? Does it matter that it breaks some archetype of what you think your job's supposed to be? It may not be in the right diagram, or maybe it's on one of the other diagrams supposed to be part of your job, so you don't want to let go of that. But if honestly, this story is something that is really well known, doesn't have a lot of external influences, isn't that complicated, sounds like a low leverage activity. It sounds like maybe if there's someone better to write the damn thing, have them write it. And maybe that's okay, right? So when you're looking at your job, it's not necessarily about, this framework says I should be writing user stories. If it's a low leverage activity, probably shouldn't. Now, if it's a story that's super important and you've been working with tons of customers and it's really complex, or maybe has regulatory requirements that required you like pouring over some 2,000-page spec that only you have all that knowledge in your head, well, maybe you should write it. Maybe you're the best person to do that. But think to yourself before just doing an activity you think is the way things are, is this the best use of my time? Is this providing the highest leverage in the organization? So I then want to go deep in ways to think about high leverage activities in an engineering organization, or product's role within engineering. And the first thing is, how many people struggle to hire engineers? Yeah. I mean, we struggle with it. I mean, every company I work with, and everyone says, well, you're not in the Bay Area. It's really hard in the Bay Area. Well, it's really hard here. It's really hard in Raleigh. I don't care where you live. I haven't lived in a place where it's not hard. This is a stat. Estimated 1 million technology jobs will go unfilled by 2020. Right? I mean, this is just. And by the way, the article goes on to say, computer science jobs. The demand for those degrees is at an all-time high. So even with degrees being at an all-time high, the demand for people with this skill set outstrips the supply. Very simply. So in our economy, in our world where software is eating the world, and the increase, we need software in every aspect of our business. Whether it's not just software anymore, and traditional software, hardware has huge software components. We're always going to need to focus on high leverage things to build, because we're always going to be a deficit for the ideal staffing. We're always going to be a little bit under the engineers we want to hit. So I think now more than ever, the product person, you should be constantly thinking about what are the things we can prioritize building that reduces pressure on engineering. Because every organization I've been in has pressure on engineering. And I think that is the number one role. Certainly the top role that product can play is, how do I use all the knowledge that I have to make sure we reduce stress on our understaffed engineering team, because most of us have them. And for a lot of us, it's not going to change unless we start cloning engineers anytime soon, which I don't see happening. So some ideas on what we can do. So And this is a classic slide, but I brought it back, because people forget about these things. But there are a notion of requirements defects, and this is and through even recent stats, still 64% of all defects found are requirements defects. And folks, requirements defects is really, really simple. It's not building things that the spec being incomplete or not shipping something absolutely correctly. And honestly, these are 100% or almost 100% preventable, right? When I find requirements defects, it is really simple. It is insufficient collecting and insufficient sharing of information. Laziness is what it is. It's I didn't really want to specify it all out. I just put a couple details in there, hand it off to the engineer. They're pretty smart. We're really smart engineers. I'm sure they'll figure it out. I mean, again, if it comes down to like a regulatory thing or a specification, they're not just going to figure that out. It's your job to disseminate that, put that into clear requirements, then give them to them so they're not confused. If they don't know what the business requirements are, if they don't know what the customers truly asked for and truly wanted, they're going to build the wrong damn thing, and that sucks. And any stat will tell you, I think we all know this is like defect 101. The cost of fixing it after you shipped it is 100 times more than just not doing it the first time or fixing it earlier in the process. So it's super, super simple. If you're going to focus on anything that's high leverage, get the specifications well enough for things that require good specifications so you don't ship things that are wrong. So don't ship requirements defects. This is a huge problem. It still exists. It's not getting better. People say Agile fixes some of this because we go so fast, but there's still a lot of waste if you're continually just shipping the wrong things and guessing. So, I think there's a huge opportunity to just go through and define things with a little more rigor to make sure we're not shipping the wrong things. Building features that are not used. So I took some charts and graphs just from our board decks. In our board slides, for our board of directors, we report on, at the highest levels, every feature that we ship and who uses it and don't use it. So if we're shipping things that people are not using, that is a problem. One, we have really good analytics, so we should be doing it. But we want to be great at product. Like shipping things that people don't get value out and don't use, that's not being great at product. So we measure it and we report up. And honestly, this chart's not amazing because it was very, very early. So this is something we shipped. This was like 2 weeks after the usage. But we look at it. And when we look at it from a bunch of different vectors, are customers even trying it? That means that they poke around. So you can see these two graphs is played with versus published. So we wanted to, because we saw the played with and we're like, those are pretty good for a couple of weeks. Then someone said, well, are they really using it? And we're like, shit, no, I guess not. So then it's the top graph, right? But the idea was that we're holding ourselves accountable, not just to ourselves, but to our management team. And look, if we're building things consistently, people aren't using, that's a problem. It's waste. Very low leverage. Again, resource constrained engineering, building things that people don't use, not the smartest thing in the world. Do they continue using it after they start it? So if they tried something, do they actually continue using it? So you can easily measure these sorts of things. Just they use it 1 week, do they come back the next, right? Simple cohort analysis. Did it deliver the intended value? I go back to which customer is trying it. We actually are bucketing all of our analytics by size of customer. Maybe that matters. Maybe small customers really, really like something. And we all have this notion of small customers and larger. A lot of us do. We all have some way to segment it, right? So what are the important segments in your business? What types of customers do you have? And look at it by the different segment. You can get some interesting information. Because if one segment clearly isn't doing something, you missed the mark. Or maybe that wasn't the intent. But the point is, it's a good way to get clarity. And then follow up. So we actually followed up with getting qualitative information. We asked them, okay, hey, we noticed you tried using it. So we went back to the chart that everyone who played with something and didn't continue using is, what did you think? And we got some greats, but we actually got some not so greats. We got a lot of really good feedback, and then we went in and then continued working on it until the feedback we got that was qualitative was mostly positive. So again, you're not done with a feature until you're delivering value? Do people getting, if you had intent, or if you're building something because you're trying to deliver a business case, you're trying to do something to support a customer's use case. If you're not solving their pain, if you're not delivering the value, you're not done. Keep working on it. And think about this. Features have a very long shelf life. High leverage. We don't remove a lot of features in this world. I mean, how many people use enterprise? People use not to pick on Salesforce.com, but people use Salesforce.com. A lot of features. You think people remove many? Yeah, it's called lightning. They actually removed a lot, and actually, a lot of us had to revert back. No disparaging lightning. It's a hard problem. It's really hard to take something away from a customer once you've shipped it. Really hard, really expensive. I have done that. It's actually one of the more interesting stories is I have gotten rid of features and you've end of life them and collected a lot of metrics, found the 3 customers that use them, reach out to those 3, tell them, hey, look, we're getting rid of this thing. It's huge technical debt. Our engineers hate this. They have to code around it constantly. It's probably costing us way more than whatever you 3 customers are paying us, so we're going to get rid of it. And then but then it's still bad, and then they complain. And they go to the sales team. I got to talk to the sales team and then say, well, I know we're going to get, So it is really difficult. So I mean, for any company of scale with lots of customers, it'll take you probably 6 months at least to get rid of it. And then you'll probably have some workaround that you'll have to maintain for a period of time. So get it right is my advice. And getting it right means constantly getting feedback, constantly getting analytics. Don't think you're done until people are actually getting the value. You're not done until you're done. And you can prove it, so there's no excuse for not doing it. Just to make sure you take the time and do that. Build high level feature. I noticed some guy from Slack spoke here a few months ago. Love Slack. I think a lot of us love Slack. But this is their marketplace, and I could have picked any product. I mean, honestly, this is a Slack marketplace. I could have picked Atlassian's marketplace. I could have picked Twitter was really good at building an ecosystem and marketplace around it. But I love building what I call high leverage features that enable others to innovate. There's always going to be so many things that people ask me to build that I won't have time to build. So I need help. I need help. Again, I have constrained engineering team. We can only build so many things, right? And I think Slack gets this. Atlassian gets this. Heck, even Salesforce gets this. We can't build everything. So how do we enable people to build the things that we don't want to build? Well, we build things like APIs. And there's always a strong fight against this. A lot of times the engineers will say, we fought this internally. Well, once we publish an API, we get to protect backwards compatibility. But what's the value of producing an API? Now you can have an ecosystem of things. You can have other people. You can have customers building their own things. We every single week we get asked for, well, can you create this specialized dashboard that my CEO can see? And this one random tool that I've never heard of. Well, we could, but we're not. But guess what, Mr. Customer? We got an API, and here's got good documentation. You can do it. And in maybe 3 years from now, we'll probably support whatever tool they ask for. That's totally okay. But in the meantime, they can build it themselves, right? So it's a great way to unblock your customers high leverage features that can deliver a lot more value. The other thing this helps you do by delivering features like this is it helps you collect better information. If you ship an API and people build integrations with 2 or 3 different products, that's pretty good market feedback. If they care enough to take their engineering resources and build integration with a product, that means it's pretty important, right? It's way more important than just asking you. It's free to ask someone for a feature. I've noticed this. I mean, every time I go on a call with a customer, I get lots of features. It's free to ask, right? Anyone can ask you for anything, right? It's very inexpensive. Once they start putting their own engineering resources against it to build the integration, it's no longer free. That's extremely good validation. Better validation you're probably getting than just asking people what they want. When it comes to integrations, high leverage integrations are already better than low leverage. So I seem to be picking out Salesforce a lot tonight, but the fact is we get questions about integrating with a lot of different products. But what we learned with doing, and this is at Pendo, all of the products people want us to integrate with were already integrated with Salesforce. So that was a pretty interesting finding. So we started asking, well, what if we just push things to Salesforce? Could you then pull the data in XYZ tool from, well, yeah, that'd be great. We could do that. So here's a scenario. We had probably 15 tools that people were asking us for. And we built one integration with one product, which happens to have an ecosystem around it, and it unlocked 15 different tools. Done. Very, very, very high leverage, right? And this, you uncover these things by just continuing to ask more provocative questions. I know you want this. Why do you want this? Oh, how do you use that product, right? So continue diving deep until you can figure out what's the highest leverage thing that we can build in order to deliver the most output, to get the most value out of this one thing we're doing. So there is a ton of opportunity in your products, whatever your products are, to drive very, very, very high leverage features. And a lot of this is just enabling these things to occur. So those are some good examples of high leverage things within development. How about outside development? And this is where too many product managers stop. Too many times in product, we just think we're part of the engineering team, or maybe have engineering backgrounds, or maybe a little geekier. I guess I'm a little geekier. I like going to lunch with the engineering team. We have similar hobbies. I mean, a lot of people don't like hanging out. Maybe the sales team, maybe different vibe over there. Maybe a little more gregarious, more extroverted. But I really recommend getting out of the room. Everyone talks about getting out of the building, but get out of your room. Go to the rest of the organization. Find out how you can drive their output. And there's a lot here. Support. I confess, I read even today at our company every single support request that comes in. And we get a reasonable number now. So it's not like an insignificant thing to read. I read every single one. Everyone. And of course you can say, well, that doesn't scale. At places like Rally in my past, there's always this support top 10. Which is the top 10 things that support thinks it needs from the product, help and blog, because it's the trends they see. But here's the problem with support top 10. They're looking at it solely from their lens. I want to look at it from the lens of all my other conversations. I want to look at other trends. I also know what we're even talking about in terms of things we could build or may build. So what I'm looking for trends that they wouldn't even uncover that may, again, create high leverage activities. I'm also looking for things where they need better education, right? I'll see people say, well, those guys don't really know much about our product, so you can really do this. Here's this workaround. But if there are clear workarounds that your support team doesn't know about, that's whose fault's that? It's probably the product's fault. They're probably not communicating enough. So there's tons of operation for collecting information and sharing information. How often do you go to lunch with people from support? Just listen to them talk, right? And share your experience, your know-how. Remember, as a product person, you should be an expert in the problem, the personas, the roles, the businesses. Share that information over and over and over and over again. Share why you built something a certain way. I think that's so, so, so important. But I ask myself all the time, because support's on my front line, are they empowered to deliver the best support possible? And how can I help them by giving them better information, giving them better knowledge? Not just telling them this is the workaround, tell them why it's the workaround. Oh, this is why this works. This is, there's a really good reason for this, Mr. Customer. Here's why. So I think huge opportunity to do this, because you can actually really change the way your support team operates by spending more time with them, measurably. Customer and user churn. This is a huge area. Who's here in customer success, or who has a customer success organization in their company? It's a hot thing, right? It's like, a couple years ago it didn't exist. Now it seems to be all the rage. But I love it. And a lot of times it's like, well, customer success owns churn. That's their problem. None of us want churn, because we all know it's super expensive to get customers. We don't want to lose them, right? So customer success owns churn. But are they really the sole owner? That seems pretty unfair, right? So, the way I look at it, unless the reason for churn is no one ever called me, it's probably more than just customer success's job churning. So think about that. Unless the reason for the customer churning is no one ever talked to us, because that is honestly customer success's job, it's probably partially your responsibility as well. So you should absolutely have part of the churn number. So this is an interesting graph that we've been creating. And this is a customer by customer graph, but you could do it across all your customers. And what a lot of people look at is you're looking at your growth curves. You're like, wow, our number of users have grown, or our number of customers have grown. But a lot of us are in growing businesses. So here's the challenge with that. You can cumulatively stay flat or grow a little bit, but still be churning users. So what this graph does is it looks at every user that's ever used the product and see whether they come back or not, and then measures it. And then it also compares it to new users coming in. So the trends you can start seeing is, yes, we may be growing, but if we could eliminate this user churn, we could be growing a lot faster, because what you may have is hidden churn, right? Hidden churn is when everything looks like you're growing, you're just not growing as fast as your opportunity is because you're actually dropping users, right? So the question is, why are you dropping the users, right? Whose job is to find that out? Yeah, customer success can get on the phone, they can ask a few questions, but there's a lot at play here. You can look at what features did they try? What features didn't they try? Let's look at the people who haven't churned, and let's see what they've done differently, right? Maybe they had a different path. Maybe they had a different experience with people who did churn. So what does that mean? Well, that may mean that the playbook we give for customer success isn't the best playbook, because maybe there's like 3 things we need to have people do that are the key 3 things that keeps them, right? Those are the kinds of insights that are absolutely imperative to collaborate with the customer success team to help fix. Because if you fix these sorts of things, everything else starts moving a lot better. But think about it. I mean, the cost of acquiring a customer or user is very expensive now. A lot of us measure this. So losing them is not a good thing. It makes it obviously losing money in general. So this is I think churn is one of the ones where huge opportunity for product to have a large role and should have a measurable role in making sure people retain here. Optimizing the sales funnel. This is another really big area. And again, this depends on the stage of your business. This is an inside square graph. So this is not a Pendo graph or anything, but it doesn't matter what tool you're using. Look at the funnel, right? So the original article that inspired me says that I don't sell. Product managers don't sell. It's true, you don't sell. But here's the deal. If you had a lot of opportunities come in, you had a lot of demos convert to trial, and your trials all failed, well, someone's doing something right? So something's working, right? Your sales team is generating active opportunities. They're getting people into the funnel, and then someone's losing them. Why are our trials not working? People are trying the product. They're not converting. Is that sales' fault? Honestly, most likely not. It may be, but most likely it's not. So rather than just passing the buck and saying, I don't sell. It's not my job. I don't carry a number. The fact remains, if every other part of your conversion funnel up to trial is good and then trial drops off, you probably have a problem in your product, and you should be measured on it, right? And then, of course, from there, if it's negotiating, closing, it could be a sales issue. But the point is that there are huge insights that you can derive from looking at your funnel. If there's a huge number of opportunities, and your demo happens, and your demo rate fails there, well, maybe your demo's broken. So whose responsibility is that? Well, yeah, it could be sales, but who knows the market better? Who knows the pain better? Who knows the competition, the differentiators? Who knows all those things? Does your brand new salesperson that you just pulled from another company know that better than your product person? Probably not, right? Very high leverage activity. If you have a sales team of 200, changing the demo could have a massive effect on your organization, a massive effect on this funnel. Be way more important than building a roadmap. But a lot of us aren't doing those things. We don't think it's part of our job, but it could have huge leverage. Marketing, huge leverage here. I mean, a lot of people talk, product marketing is loosely part of marketing. Of course, product marketing is, writing all the website content, collateral, sell against sheets, all those sorts of things. So obviously there's a lot of help, a lot of know-how you can share. Those are obvious. A lot of us are already probably doing those. But I think the other key thing is the best leads. How do you get leads, right? And who better to help lead gen than the product organization? If you're doing display advertising, what websites do our customers look at? When you go out there talking to them, ask them, hey, where'd you find us? What are you looking at? What meetups do you go to? Right? Those types of things is amazing data to feed back to the marketing organization to drive leads. Another key aspect of this is thinking about, making sure you understand the market well. This persona, this type of customer is really, really good. We had a conversation in the back, are you more B2C or B2B? If our marketing team's going after B2C and we're definitely more B2B, it's not gonna, this funnel's not gonna be going well. People are gonna be coming in, they're gonna be disappointed, they're like, what the hell, I wasn't expecting this, and they're gonna drop. That's a problem, right? This is a problem that your collecting and sharing of information can have demonstrable feedback on. A sales coach. Some of our organizations have sales and some don't. So if it's not obvious, if your organization does not have a sales team, your product is the sales team, right? So guess what? Sales is your job then. So how many people have that model where their product sells itself, completely self-service? Does anyone have that? Okay. No one. That's surprising. So that's obviously more B2C, but there are plenty of companies that do that. In that case, you are the salesperson. So consider yourself that part of your job. But if you're not, being the best sales coach is hugely important. Competitive win-loss. And I have more examples around that. Overcoming objections. Pricing and packaging. So pricing and packaging is typically on the product manager's activity list. But this is huge. Because you need a ton of data to mess around with pricing and packaging. It could have a huge effect on your business. One thing I'd recommend one of the challenges with pricing and packaging is because I've owned this and I've done it a bunch of different ways. We even hired consultants and brought them in and read all the books and got all the data. At the end of the day, the best way to really get good feedback is to test it out. Go have a few conversations, send it out, talk to your customers. When we started Pendo, the first month I sold, I changed the price list 3 times a week, every week for the first month. I knew the price list was pretty good when I changed it every 4 weeks. And then we stopped changing it, and then we got to a point where it was working. But you know what? You just got to put something out there. In fact, if people are going to ask, you have to tell them, give them something, and then iterate. It is the only way to do it, right? And until you've actually tried to ask someone for money, that is one of the few ways that you're going to get really, really good feedback. So don't be afraid to be part of that process. Sit in the calls, listen to salespeople doing it. I think it's super important. And then report on the results. So this is going to be probably a controversial slide because I'm actually advocating that you as product people measure yourself against things beyond just activities, but I think you need to think about it in terms of your job. But again, so let's say we have a problem in sales where you discover that we are losing early in a sales cycle to competitor X based on ability Y. So what am I going to do about that? So as a product person, I went deeper into X. So and I don't know if you guys do competitive analysis. There's a lot of controversy in product development. In fact, don't follow your competitors. I agree, don't follow your competitors. But I'd like to know everything about the competitors as possible. And what does everything mean? I mean installing it, using it, playing with it, not just relying on, I read the website, or I downloaded a white paper, I know everything about that thing, or no, that is not. No, most of my organizations, we use everything in immense detail, every nook and cranny, because that's how you actually get really interesting results. It's like, wow, I tried to do the most basic of things and it was impossible. Right? So you can discover a lot more differentiation by collecting this information. Also through that, you can make a decision like building a feature that maybe augments something that is just bad that you're missing. And then you can update that information back with your team. And then again, hold yourself accountable. So let's say you have a goal as a product person to increase your win rate against a certain competitor, and you work out a strategy and do that. Measure yourself, report back, go to a higher level. Huge opportunity here. And it has massive leverage in your business. Again, another example, churning a bunch of prospects early in the trial. Maybe you went deeper, understand the type of customer, found we're attracting the wrong type of customer. Again, hence, and then work with marketing to correct it. Maybe we're taking out the wrong ads in the wrong place. Huge opportunity to just fix the funnel to, again, drive more output. So that's a very high leverage activity. It doesn't feel typical for product teams. So, I hope you got that my goal from this talk was getting you to transition your thinking from traditional product activities like owning vision, building the roadmap, running stories, to your job is to share your expertise, your know-how with the rest of the organization to help that organization increase its output. That is ultimately your job. You have, honestly, an amazing role in a company, and I do think some of those slides that puts product at the middle, I think there's a lot of good reason for that. I think you have the opportunity to influence so many pieces of the machine of your business that is super, super exciting. And don't get caught up in what you think the role has to have, or what you think the job is, or what the job description may. Be bold, go seek out high leverage activities, and focus on driving the output. So, I ask you, think about it as you walk out of here. What are the highest leverage activities I can be doing in my organization? Are you doing them? Do you find you're doing some things that are non-high leverage, that are just like checking off the boxes? I just updated the roadmap this week, push things out here and there. Is that the highest leverage thing you can really do? Updating the roadmap? Maybe it is. Maybe that roadmap is super, super important. But maybe it's not, right? Maybe there's other areas of business that may feel uncomfortable to you to go sit with support for a day, or shadow 6 sales calls, or sit on 4 QBRs with your customer success. Maybe it's uncomfortable, but maybe that's a better use of your time. You actually can deliver more output. You can help the organization in greater ways. I'm going to end on a small story. So one of the areas where that I had a lot of fun prior to my career was working very collaboratively with sales. I'm an engineer by training. I like to write code. I love collaborating with engineers as well. But we started seeing situations in our product team that we're getting these weird requests. Like people kept asking for features that weren't really like good asks. And honestly, we didn't want to build them. There were things that our product really didn't do very well. But we had reasons we didn't want to do them. They were not part of our vision. It wasn't architecturally aligned where we wanted to go. So I was trying to figure out what's similar about these customers. So I started digging deep and started talking with sales and started talking with a customer and going on a few sales calls. And what I realized is that the sales presentation that we had was just not highlighting differentiators. It wasn't positioning our product in the right way. It was actually creating product requests that weren't really ever needed to be built. So I spent the next month revamping our presentation. And is that part of my job? Well, no. I guess I worked with sales engineering. I worked with sales. But I put together a huge Dropbox account of a bunch of different slides, all highlighting things we did really, really, really well. Things we did well today. Things that solved real pain points, that real customers use in the real world with really good examples, and completely changed the conversation. We started closing more deals. We started reducing number of crazy feature requests that we were never going to build and had to say no constantly. Very, very, very high leverage activity that I would never in a million years think that was my job to do. Never in a million years even think that I wanted to be spending most of my time creating PowerPoint. It doesn't sound as fun as working with engineers, solving cool technical problems. But at the end of the day, it was the highest leverage thing I could be doing. I had I had the know-how, I'd been collecting the information, and it was a way that drove a lot of input or output, not just from the sales organization, but across the whole organization. So I'll leave you with that example. So, questions?
All right, thanks a lot, Todd. Have a round of applause. All right, so yeah, we have some good timing for questions. I'm just going to start at the back. We do have the live stream going, so just raise your hand and I'll pass the mic around so they can hear you online, and we'll take it from there. So raise your hand if you have any. Otherwise, I'll start with the first one. So one question for you, Todd. You are now in your current role kind of living what a lot of product managers at some point dream about being, is not only in a product role, but also the boss, the CEO. So I'd love to hear about your thoughts around that transition from being a product manager and moving into more of a CEO role. What do you like about it? Some of the transition or challenges of being a product guy, but also now trying to run the company.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people say the same thing. And I do think transitioning from a product role to CEO is a good path. I mean, I think there's a lot of very good case studies around it. So I felt like my background and skill sets, I think they transferred nicely. I think, the things that I'm weaker on and don't care as much, very honestly, things like any detail that, like, accounting and finance, and I mean, I like numbers and like doing cool what if models, but when it comes to just the very basic details and that kind of stuff bores the living, just bores daylights out of me. So I think that's an area that was a bit of a stretch, for me. I do think I had been advising sales, building presentation for sales, actually carrying the bag and owning the number. I mean, that was super stressful. I mean, I'll be honest, there is a way different stress when you're the only one. I mean, for a while, I was the only one selling, and I think I advise you, if you're starting from scratch as the founders, go out there and sell and close all the original deals. It's hard. And then subsequently, hiring a sales team. I think I can hire product people, hire engineers, hiring salespeople. I mean, they're naturally good at selling themselves, right? So vetting out like which ones that are really good versus not really good. I mean, they all sound good. So that was another skill set that it's taken me a while to really learn and dive into. But it's fun, and I do think that the investment part. A lot of people ask me about raising money and things like that, and I think that's just telling a really, really good story. And I think a lot of product people have to tell. Storytelling is part of our jobs, part of the sharing the information. I think we're well prepared for that aspect of it. So.
Thanks for coming today. When you're engaging with customers and business priorities, how do you deal with the tyranny of the large customer?
Yeah, I think, large customers are always going to be a little bit dangerous, right? Because they have the capability of completely sidetracking your entire roadmap, right? So I've dealt with it in a couple different ways. I think the first question I asked myself, and we had this problem at Rally, we had this problem at Pendo, I had this problem everywhere, is are the things that the customers want things that only this customers want, or are they things that reflect the type of customers that we want to get in the future, right? And that's actually the first question you have to ask. And you have to actually go on site, you have to look at it, watch them use it. Some of the challenges with large customers come down to they start using your product in ways that is just more than what everyone else does. I see that class of problem a lot. And that's things like organizing things in your product. Or, oh my gosh, I created 3 million of these things. Or I have 200 users and your user screen sucks, right? I think those are the things that if you want more customers like that, you're going to have to figure out ways to prioritize. I've done other things, and some people agree or disagree with this, is when it comes down to APIs, allow my services team to go build maybe some slightly different screens, or maybe some things that buy me time on the roadmap so that I don't have to go do that. That's another thing I've done in the past. Now, if they're asking for things that literally are just not things you ever care about, then I think you need to have a values question and just be honest with them. Go back to customers and say, I want your business, but I'm not going to build this. So we can collaborate you, and you can use our APIs to do it, maybe offline, but we're just not going to do it. So that's something that's worked for me in the past. Back? Oh.
So you just mentioned prioritization. How do you prioritize? How do you?
I'm sorry. Okay, so how do I prioritize? There is no right or wrong on prioritization. I do.
There is a wrong.
There can be a wrong. Yeah. I think. So I've done it a bunch of different ways again, and I think if I think of the scaled organization, so I'm thinking back to my experience, something like a Rally, where I've got 20 product managers, product owners working across teams. The question is, how do you prioritize across all these teams? So one, I like to look at in scaled organizations this notion of investment buckets, right? I have Horizon 1 activities. This is a Jeffrey Moore-like model, which is things that are going to impact my business today. And then the question I ask myself is, what percentage of my overall throughput do I want to invest in things for today? And I have Horizon 2 things, which are things that I want to affect my business in the next 12 to 24 months, right? Because you want to work on those things. Like for example, at Pendo, we're working on mobile now. We don't expect a dime of mobile revenue this year, but we expect a lot of it next year, and if we don't build it now, then we'll never have a chance of getting it next year. So we have to do some Horizon 2 activities, and then some are Horizon 3, and Horizon 3 are kind of way off distant future. And I think about and be intentional about what's most important to my business now, and it's going to be some blend. And then within those blends, I usually have a backlog of the most important things within that, force ranked, and pulling them off. Now, when I do prioritization, I do like to focus, and it's probably obvious that I like low-hanging fruit. So low-hanging fruit are things that deliver a lot of value that for the smallest cost. So all of my prioritizations, I use weighted priorities. So I don't have this in my talk, but this notion of kind of value over cost, and do a lot of work to make sure that I'm trying to prioritize that low-hanging fruit. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. So on the pricing side, you had mentioned the exercise you went through with your organization, changing pricing all the time. Just a little more context there. How did you know you were done messing with pricing? What were you looking for? What was the reactions you were measuring? So forth.
Yeah, I think one of the key things when you're doing pricing is someone is going to counter you normally. And here's the challenge with it. You're negotiating. So the customer is trying to get the best deal possible. So the question I always ask myself is, am I just a bad negotiator? What if that's true and they're really, really good? So to remove that out of it, what you have to see is what type of feedback am I getting, and what. So what I learned is I would say, what are you comparing me to? What are you thinking about? And people will typically tell you, well, I'm comparing you to, well, a lot of times people compare people to headcount. I think very often it's like, well, I could buy this product, or I could have a couple people do it, or I get a couple engineers go build that, right? That's a really common thing. And it's really valuable to understand, are they thinking it's one engineer or thinking it's two? That gives you ballpark sizing or what it is. Maybe they think it's a half of an engineer. These are useful measures. They'll also tell you what competitors are comparing you to. And tell you what plans of those competitors you're comparing to. Super valuable information. So what I look to is when we got to a place where the answers, the reference points we're getting back were ones that we could clearly articulate a difference in value, and we're winning at pretty high rates, I felt like it was enough to stop. You don't want to be too easy. If it's too easy, you're probably priced too low. So you want to be some tension, but you want it to be good enough that you can overcome. So maybe not in every case, but most cases.
Hi. So I'm one of the college students at the Longhorn Startup Incubator, and one of my fraternity brothers and I, we built an iOS app as a proof of concept, and it's actually gained some traction. We built an Uber for laundry and dry cleaning, basically. It's called Press, you can check it out. But it's actually evolved into something that's more than a school project now. And we've started receiving a lot of requests from outside people. I was just wondering, at this point, at the stage we're at, is it valuable to bring on board a product manager who wants this? He claims he can help us. Because we don't have a web or an Android app yet. So
Well, I guess I'll pose the question back. What problems are you having? You know, I mean, first of all, you guys built a product and you're having some traction. I mean, it's hard to discern whether you have product market fit, but if it sounds like you're on the right path, you may not. That may not be the first person I would hire. I don't know. Maybe it is. I mean, it depends on your backgrounds and where you're at. But you know, I like pain-based hiring. What problems am I having in my company right now, and especially when you're your stage, and what sort of skill sets do I need to alleviate those pain? And we didn't hire our first real sales rep other than me until there was more deals than I could personally work. Pretty good pain. When there's, like, honestly, I'm just inundated. That's a good answer. What you don't want to do is hire a head of pain. Right, that's really, really bad, and that's and I think you'll see this. Like we just we had our and this is super open, but we just had our first person leave us. We hired we already had a senior designer. We hired a second senior designer. I don't know why we hired a second one, but we did. We opened a rec, but our engineering capacity hasn't kept up with our design. So now we have people creating specs for things that don't have engineers to build them. Well, guess what? That person got really bored. Again, hiring ahead of pain, it doesn't really work out. I mean, feel the pain a little bit more, and then find ways to plug the hole. So.
In a word, what's the difference between a product which succeeds and doesn't?
Oh, jeez. There is no one word. So, I mean, I think good products, I think good products understand pain and, iteratively work to provide, a good solution to it. I think at the end of the day, it's really about alleviating pain. I mean, if you think about the products we use on a daily basis, they are alleviating some pain in our life and doing a good job of it. A better job than others.
They're adding more pain. I don't know.
What?
If they don't work, they're adding more pain.
No, I mean, I know we all use software that we don't like, we complain about, and that's frustrating. That's part of Pendo's goal is to help prevent that. But even in the organizations where we're using software that causes more pain, it's probably reducing. It's probably net positive, is what I found, or you wouldn't be using it, right? And I think about even the softwares, one of the great examples in product now is this Slack versus HipChat thing. I mean, if you've been in the industry for a while, and I was at Rally, I acquired a company called FlowDoc. None of you may have not even heard of this company. It's a company in Finland. So I'm super passionate about that space, and somehow Slack beat all of them. And you gotta keep asking yourself, the product person, how the hell did they win, right? And you can argue, well, they had better funding and all the cool kids in the valley, cool companies. And that's part of it. Marketing was a huge part of it. But they did a lot of little things right. They solved the pain a little bit better. The integrations, were clearly the best at that. So again, they solved the pain better than anyone else, and they won. Or are winning. So I guess you can't declare a winner yet, but I think that's really the key. So.
Yeah, I've worked for an organization that doesn't really understand product management. They think it's project management, which kind of makes me want to punch things. But anyway, so what suggestions would you have about just educating the company and guiding the company about the value of product management and how it could take us beyond where we are today?
So I guess the question I pose back is the role of product. There are certain things that just have to be that the product management does do, like listening to customers, talking to them, focusing on what to be building, and collaborating with engineers. I mean, if there's no one doing that, there should be huge problems with the product in terms of not selling, or I think the key thing is going to pain. If you're finding scenarios where good product management would have fixed something, would have increased revenue, would have decreased churn. Focus on the business benefit of it. I think this whole project versus product. The question I always ask myself is now maybe I'm wrong, I mean, but usually project management isn't the best, most highly leveraged activity that a product manager can be doing, and keep using that as your framework of communication. And I'd go back to look, I know you're asking me to do this or organize this, but is this the highest leverage activity? What's the output going to be? Just keeping us on target? I think there's maybe better people suited for that. So, I don't know, I hope that helps. I mean, I could talk to you offline about it too. So, yeah.
Yeah, you talked about how you read all of the inbound support tickets that come into Pendo right now, and you mentioned something about how it doesn't scale very well. And I'm wondering, it sounds like you do that mainly because you feel that you're approaching from a different lens than how support approaches it. What would be recommendations? What are your recommendations for best practices for when you're in a position where it doesn't scale, either because there's too much volume or it's going to be all over phone channel, and so you can't really sit and listen to everything that comes in?
I think sampling. I mean, I still think there is huge amount of value of getting to the root, right, and sitting on calls. And honestly, my first job ever programming was at a credit card bank. So it used to be MBNA, now Bank of America, and they made every officer of the company, everyone vice president hire, do 30 minutes of phone support time a month listening in, and develops a huge amount of empathy. Again, the sampling, you can't listen to all of them, but hearing the end customer, you will pick up on things that no one else is picking up on. I mean, the folks in support, their job is to respond quickly, and their job is not to synthesize a bunch of external data to kind of figure out the best solution. And your know-how is extremely important here. So take spot checks, and even at companies like Rally, where I couldn't necessarily read all of them, I'd read a reasonable one there. I'd have people on my team do it. All my direct reports would be doing it, and we talk about it. What did you see? What trends did you see? What customers are the ones that are going in? So there is no replacement for getting to that. So I would just, again, do sampling. Yeah.
Thank you, Todd. We are going to be giving away a couple of door prizes. And Todd, you actually have a call to action on this one.
Oh, I do.
You're going to select the person who had the best question. But not yet. You have a little time,
okay.
you have a little time to think about it.
No pressure there.
So for those of you who haven't followed Product Austin on Twitter, it's at Product Austin. And so please feel free to go there, and you can sort of keep up on the events that we're holding and various other sort of cool stuff there as well. We are going to be having another meetup, but sort of stay tuned for that. And we'll get that scheduled and get the word out about that one. You will be getting an attendee survey tonight. So be expecting that, and we're very interested in your feedback. Any feedback that you can give that can sort of help us understand what's working and what's not in these new events. And parking validation is available at the front desk. The pizza that you got and the speaker that you got were made possible by one of our co-hosts, Prabhakar, who runs craftsmanpm.com. So he's our sponsor, and we owe a lot to him to sort of lining up a lot of the great speakers that we've had and providing the food as well. You can go to craftsmanpm.com and click the Apply Now button if you're interested in some of the workshops that he puts on. So feel free to do that. And now it's time for the door prizes. So we've got two of them. One is going to be for the most prolific tweeter. But before we get to that one, let's see if Todd has had some time to think about which question was the top question. I can give you a couple of hints.
Yeah, please.
So there was one about sort of when the PM the product manager might provide value, and how early they should hire the product manager. And then there was another one about project versus product management. couple of ideas.
Yeah, I think
And
that
also the tyranny of it, too.
what was it?
The tyranny of the large customer was good, too.
Tyranny of the
yeah.
large customer.
That was the one. Yeah, I couldn't remember your question, but that's where I was leaning. So yeah.
Okay,
Tyranny of
so
large
it's
customer,
the
yeah.
tyranny of the large customer.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get an as yet decided book from Prabhakar's wonderful collection. So what you'll wanna do is just approach Prabhakar at the back of the room or wherever he is at the time to arrange to get that book from him. And then as far as the most prolific tweeter that is not among the co-hosts, I think that's going to go to Chuck Phipps. So and he knows where to get his collect on his products too. All right, thanks everybody. Again, you can validate your parking at the front desk.
Thank you. I am hungry.
Not thank you.
Oh, really? Hey, how you doing?
Hey, you're right.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
I'm fairly new to product management. That's good. Yeah. So sometimes I'll look at my think about it, but challenging. Todd.